Okay, welcome back in. It's now time to continue my 32 and 32. I'm going to look at the New York Jets. What hasn't been said, or what haven't I said about the Jets that hasn't already been talked about? Inconsistency, poor playing, bad coaching, bad signings, bad trades. There's just a lot of bad things that went wrong for the Jaguars last year, and I apologize, my phone just locked it there for a second, so I got to make sure I keep my hand on that so it doesn't get a black screen again. But yeah, very disappointing season for the not the Jacksonville Jaguars. I apologize, for the New York Jets. They would finish last year with a record of, you can see on your screen, 5 wins and 12 losses. And considering that 2 years ago when they made the trade for Aaron Rodgers, they were expected to not only be a playoff team, but a Super Bowl contender at that. And obviously, Rodgers got hurt in his first series against the Bills on their opening night, and that kind of screwed them of last year. This past season, he was healthy, and they still were below 500. So they got a lot of question marks going forward. I really don't know what the right answer is. They did just recently hire a coach, but will one coach really change the dynamic and the output of the entire team? I really can't say yes and no. Their major question has to be who is going to be their quarterback moving forward. Because Rodgers, if I'm not mistaken, he's got to be in his early 40s by now. And a lot of players don't play for that long of a time. And especially when you get to the age 40, it's very scarce to keep your career going and still be an elite quarterback at that position. So last year, we'll take a look at their schedule. So again, the regular season or the preseason doesn't mean jack, and if it did mean anything, at least you can say they were undefeated in the 3 preseason games that they did play. So their opening game was against San Fran, and San Fran's always been like an Achilles heel to Aaron Rodgers. If you don't believe me, look at their past playoff matchups between the Packers and San Fran. It's never really been on his side as at that point. They would win 2 games against the Titans and the Patriots, respectively, putting them at 2-1. And a lot of people thought, okay, well, they're at 2-1. They could possibly, do some damage. And then unfortunately, they would go on to lose 5 straight games, dropping them to 2-6. They would finally end their losing streak against the Texans. Then they would lose 2 straight games before their bye week. And then coming out of their bye week, they would lose 2 more games as well. They would finally stop the losing streak against the Jaguars, only to lose their 2 games against the Rams and Bills, respectively. And their last game, for some reason, I can't scroll my phone up far enough, they would host the Miami Dolphins and they would win out their regular season. So they would finish off on a high note, but because they had lost 12 games, it really didn't mean jack squat at the end of the season. So we'll take a look at some stats from their players. So as I said, Aaron Rodgers, the guy under center, he had finished this past year with 3,897 yards, almost 3,900 yards on the season. He would finish with a 63% completion. His touchdown to interception ratio was actually pretty decent, 28-11. There's on the screen right now. So he had a fairly respectable year. When it came to his wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, he would finish with 1,104 yards, 101 receptions, and 7 touchdowns. Davante Adams, they acquired him from the Las Vegas Raiders during this season. And I knew the only reason that they acquired Adams was because they wanted to reunite him and Aaron Rodgers, thinking that they could get their spark back from Green Bay. But unfortunately, it was too little too late at that point by the time that they acquired him. And obviously, they lost more games with Adams than without. So he had finished the season with 854 receiving yards, 67 receptions, and 7 touchdowns. Breece Hall, I almost said Bryce Hall. He would finish, the running back would finish with 876 rushing yards on 209 attempts and 5 touchdowns. Braylon Allen, the other running back, would finish with 334 rushing yards on 92 attempts and 2 TDs himself. On defense, Will McDonald IV, a defensive end, would finish with 10.5 sacks. He had 18 tackles and 2 forced fumbles. Jamien Sherwood, the inside linebacker, would finish with 95 tackles. He had 2 sacks, no forced fumbles, and no picks. Brandon Eccles, the cornerback, would finish with 2 interceptions. He had 28 tackles and 3 pass deflections. And looking at their special teams, Greg Zuerlein, the kicker, he had 9 field goals on 15 attempts, so a 60% rate on that aspect. And Thomas Morstead, the punter, would finish with 2,972 yards, 63 punts. So now I'll go back. Then I got to go to team. I can click on that. And then we'll take a look. So the Jets would finish third in the AFC East. So on offense, they would finish 16th in passing yards, 3,714. So middle of the pack at that point. For receiving yards, they would finish 14th in the league. They had 4,016 receiving yards. First downs, though, they were 24th in the league. They had 83 total first downs. Rushing yards, they were 31st in the league, so they weren't that good at the rushing aspect with 1,561 yards. And points, they were 25th in the league, 338 total points. So now take a look at their defense. So the sacks, they were 12th in the league, so they were still fairly decent on that aspect. They would finish the year with 43 sacks. Interceptions, they only had 7 picks the entire year, finishing 28th in the league. Forced fumbles, they were right around the middle of the pack with 14 forced fumbles, and they would finish with 687 tackles, which would be good for 5th overall in the league. And again, to special teams, field goals made, they were 31st in the league. They had 20 field goals. Field goal percentage, they were 30th in the league with a 71.4 percentage when it came to that side of the things. Extra points made, they were 25th in the league with 28 extra points, and their extra point percentage would be 30th in the league, 90.3. So therefore, they definitely missed an extra point or two. So my summary for the Jets, again, like I said at the very start, high expectations, but they weren't able to really they were, let's just put it this way, and there's no pun intended because the team name is Jets. They were grounded through basically the entire season. Aside from that 2-1 start, they would basically go on to lose, or after their 2-1, they would finish with a 3-11 record at that point. So not a very good win to loss ratio. Like I said, moving forward for this team, the expectations, I don't know what they are. They just need to know what their plans are. If they decide to bring Aaron Rodgers back, they can't be overpaying him like the money that they did for the last 2 years. I'm not sure if his contract is up or not, but my God, if I was the GM of the Jets, I would just cut my ties and try to draft another quarterback. Yes, you could say that's burned them in the past because they have tried drafting other quarterbacks like Zach Wilson and other players as well, and it hasn't. Sam Darnold, you could say, is in that mix as well, but it hasn't worked out. But it hasn't worked out bringing in a veteran quarterback. And from a Broncos fan, when we traded for Russell Wilson, I thought, whoa, this is a great move, and it was an absolute disaster for 2 years, which you could say is the exact same scenario as the Jets. They brought in a veteran quarterback, thought he'd be able to do something, and unfortunately, they weren't able to do anything at all. So, I think personally, you cut ties with Rodgers. If he decides he wants to play for another team, go ahead and let him play for another team. But if you want to try and compete and get over this 12 or 13 year drought where you haven't made the postseason and you want to end that, I think you have to go in a different direction. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. You've had 2 years. Yes, you've had a fully healthy year with Rodgers, and you only got 5 wins. Again, you can't really count last year because he got hurt on their opening drive against the Bills. But if you bring him back for another year and you have another disappointing season, then you're really shooting yourself in the foot because maybe there's a decent quarterback in this draft that they could possibly get around wherever they finish in the standings, or maybe they got to trade up for a quarterback. I don't know, but they have to make a move because without a good quarterback, you're nothing in this league, and let's be realistic about that. So, yeah, I've ranted so much this past season about the Jets that I just don't feel the need. I really have to express my opinions that often, and I don't need to make like a 20-minute video about one team. I'm already 10 minutes into this one, and I think I'm pretty much done. So going into next year, I don't know what you can say is realistic for the Jets. They're not winning the AFC East. Let's just be blunt about that. the Bills have the AFC East. That's like the Bills. Let's put it this way: the Bills are basically like the modern day Patriots, where the Patriots just won the division every single year, they made the playoffs every single year, and now the Bills have taken over that role. They have now won 5 straight AFC East championships, and there's a reason why they're one of the best teams in the AFC. Aside from them, you have the Miami Dolphins. They're a bit of a question mark because I don't know what they're going to be doing in the offseason with their question marks with Tyreek Hill. And then other than that, you have the Patriots. So just like I talked about with the Jaguars in the last video, I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets finish third again in their respective divisions. I just don't see a scenario where they finish higher than third, unless the Dolphins absolutely crumble and fall down to third or fourth place. There's no way the Jets next year at least are going to make the playoffs, even if they do happen to draft a rookie quarterback. I just think there's a lot of key pieces that they need filled. And again, the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, I really don't know what to make of that. Again, if I was in charge, I'd say cut him, get rid of him, but that's just me. All right, that's going to take care of this recap for this particular team. As always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative at the same time. As always, take care.